always my dream to work with orchids ever since I lived in Hawaii. I was born and raised there. And I think my earliest memory was taking care of orchids. One of my chores as a child was kind of having to water the orchids outside. And they just hung on walls and they grew so easy, so I think I had a false understanding of how easy they were to take care of. Hillwood Museum and Gardens is a wonderful estate located in Washington, D.C. on 25 acres. It was originally a private home owned by Marjorie Post, who was the heiress to the Post Company. Marjorie Post was married 4 times, and husbands do come and go. However, her love of orchids remained. And when she passed away in 1973, she really left us quite a treasure trove. It is one of the largest plant families in the world, if not the largest. There's over 25,000 to 30,000 species of orchids, and they have evolved in every continent except for Antarctica. I really wanted to focus on something that I felt passionate about. The position of orchid curators is one, perhaps there's only a dozen or so in the country that have that. So when this came available, I thought it was a dream job. And especially working at a place like this, amidst DC's kind of crazy, hectic life. It provides this wonderful oasis. So for me to work with this wonderful orchid collection has just been a dream come true. One of my favorite sort of consistent orchids really is the Cattleya orchid, which also happens to be Mrs. Post's favorite. I think it's a favorite for a lot of orchid enthusiasts. They're big, bright, showy flowers, amazing fragrances. They're called the Queen of Orchids for a reason. There's one orchid called the bee orchid. It's a beautiful, tiny little orchid, maybe only 8 inches or so tall. And it grows in the ground, and it's evolved over millions of years so that it is able to attract its pollinator, which is a bee, by producing flowers that look exactly like the female bee. And not only does it produce a flower that looks like a female bee, but it produces a certain type of chemical, which is the exact chemical makeup of the pheromone that is released by the female bee. It blows my mind because you have a plant that is evolved so perfectly in tune with its environment and with another living sentient being. To be able to produce a chemical pheromone that is consisting of thousands of different chemicals, but that matches perfectly with a bee from another kingdom, the animal kingdom, for me is amazing. My goal is to not only show beautiful orchids with big blooms and different colors, but to really show the public the diversity. Truly, they are wonderful plants, and I could spend the rest of my life learning about them and studying them and still not even skim the surface.
It's been reported that it hasn't been eating in the last couple of weeks, and for some reason it's also shedding a lot of skin. So we have done some treatments already. So because it's kind of beyond that point where we can recover it by just giving it food and letting it eat on its own, we want to force feed her. No. You just go in. Okay. So he makes it. Amphibians are like let's say like a thermometer or like a emergency alarm system. So because they are so susceptible to temperature, humidity, and pollutants or contaminants in the environment, any the slightest change that you add to an ecosystem, amphibians are the first ones that will show that there's something wrong, because they are bioindicators. They tell us. It's really easy to know. If you see a bunch of amphibians dying in a forest, even a protected area, you better be worried, because there's something massively wrong going on, and that's what we have seen. We are on a road outside of El Valle, and we're heading to what is one of the last places where I found golden frogs. Back in 2009, we came here at night to look for frogs, and I looked up and there was a golden frog around these bushes here, and that was the last golden frog I found. It was a male that we still have back at the center, but since that night in 2009, we haven't seen golden frogs here. You don't want to think too much about it, but there's that little feeling inside of you that's kind of telling you like you might find a golden frog, and it will be exciting, And then when you leave, you're like, you didn't find a golden frog. It was not exciting to come here. But we'll see. back here, and I know that I won't find what I used to find here, and I know that things are different nowadays. I had to learn how to deal with it every time I came up here. It was kind of depressing and hard, but now it's different. Now I feel better when I look at the animals that we have, that I know that they don't have a pristine habitat, forests and everything they were used to, but at least we gave them a chance. I took these animals that were free and put them into a tank, and so at the end of the day you wonder if, do they know that the only reason why we did it is because if we left them out there, they wouldn't have an opportunity against this fungus. To lose animals in here, it's not, we set this up to save animals, not to lose them. So what is it like to lose them? When you know it's your fault, when you made a small mistake for us, means the life for one or several of our animals. So when you are here, you just have to be positive if you want positive things to happen. When there's something negative, it's just the best way to deal with it is talk about it and get over it and keep going, because there's still a lot of mouths to be fed and tanks to be cleaned and frogs to be bred, and it's a lot of things. So to lose an animal, is losing a battle, not a war. So you gotta keep going.
Climate has been the elephant in the room for a long time as far as policy is concerned. It has vast implications for regulation, and that's the reason that political consultants have directed their ire at it and warned Republicans to, at best, say, I'm not a scientist, and to avoid doing anything about it. It's extraordinary to me that anybody can put themselves forward for president right now and not have a position that makes clear how they're going to address the number one threat to the planet. The domestic challenge to an administration to address climate change is a very perplexing one. I don't recall that I ever attempted to get acceptance for a regulation to address a problem that much of the Congress didn't believe existed. That's the case with respect to, the Clean Power Rule that's going to reduce CO2 from existing power sources. That incongruity has been paralyzing to policy. Political polarization has reached a really extreme level. In a period of 20 years, the agency has come to be regarded, particularly its efforts on climate, as toxic, as ideologically extreme. And the fear is that as we move into addressing climate, the regulations necessary will be anathema to certain segments, certain sectors of the society. Well, they will have important consequences for coal, for example, and for other sources of greenhouse gases that are going to have to be more carefully reined in, or substitutes are going to have to be found. We've done it before. People figured it out. We have to do that again, and we have to somehow cause the country to come together to recognize that climate is not an ideological issue. It ought not to be a divisive one. If ever there was anything that should unite us, it's the care for the planet, and particularly care for the people likely to be most impacted, most egregiously hurt. It has long seemed true to me that people march for religion and for ethics and for justice. They don't march for science. We really need to integrate our ethical vision and our religious orientation, whatever it may be, with our understanding of the planet's needs and the environment. I was tremendously pleased Pope Francis issued an encyclical. It redefines dominion in an extremely important way. I am given to understand that interpretations, particularly in some of the more conservative theological circles of dominion, have contributed to the resistance to believing that planetary stability is anything that humans can control or influence, that's arrogating powers that belong to the divine. Well, in explaining dominion as a matter of caretaking, of responsibility for the sacred, the whole concept in Christianity is one of the incarnation, which means the earth and its creatures are sacred. That kind of belief structure, I think, needs to be emphasized much more. One reason I've always been an environmental optimist is my life has encompassed vast improvements of air and water and park protection and creation of parks and protection of wildlife and endangered species and all the rest, things that are from the modern era. That should give us confidence that we can do it again. We're going to have to do it for climate. We're probably going to have to do it for water, which is going to be the first manifestation of the severity of the climate problem will be either too much water at one time or too little over an extended period. EPA needs to speak to those issues. It's inextricably involved with environmental resources. And if that's the case, there is no better place, there's no more logical conscience of the government on the environment than the Environmental Protection Agency.